Hello everyone, Brad Johnson here. In this video, I'm going to be sharing a very important and enlightening topic that is all about preventing yourself from falling into the fear of that which is originally divine. Now, I know it's kind of a big title, I know it's kind of a big topic, but I find this one very, very important to share with you. And I really had no plans to make a video on this topic. It just, again, came to me through flow. Now, if we look into the course of our ancient history, especially if we look back into these secret societies that have primarily been corrupted, and they have utilized so much of what was originally divine to basically take over and pervert a lot of those original blueprints that were left for us to reach ourselves into a greater state of transcendence, into a greater state of expansion, bliss, harmony, unification back into the divine. So what am I talking about specifically? Well, if we look into certain religious aspects pertaining to names of God, for example, if we look at the name Jehovah, the name Jehovah has actually been perverted, going back into the ancient times, where it basically is these kind of overlord-based beings who would use the phrase of Jehovah to represent themselves. And that if anyone any commoner, so to speak, tried to utter that name, that this would relate to them being stoned, being killed, right, being maimed, having all kinds of horrible things said or basically done upon them based upon uttering and saying that particular term. The same thing goes with the term of Yahweh, right? So we basically have these imposter Sumerian beings that would utilize the term Yahweh, right? And that again, if anyone would utter that, that would not represent that of an initiate or someone in that sense of a high priesthood, then that person could basically meet their own fate. It would lead into their death. It's not just that, again, it's what we see nowadays coming into the modern times about uttering certain words like that, or being able to use certain symbols. As an example would be the Star of David, right? Star of David was, oh my God, Brad, what are you doing? That's an Illuminati symbol. What are you doing? That's something that the deep state uses. And you would be right. You would be correct about that. They certainly do use that. Right? Or if I'm doing this, Brad, my God, that's a backward 6. That's something that's been used by the Illuminati. That's something done by secret societies. That's something done by the deep state. Don't use that. And you would be right that that is something that is being used by secret societies. That is something that is being used by the corrupt, you could say. Now, here's a question I have for you. Did the corrupt invent those names and those symbols? No, they didn't. What they did was they perverted those names. And what they did was they perverted those particular symbols. So therefore, that particular name, whether we look at Jehovah, whether we look at Yahweh, whether we look at the Star of David, whether we look at, this particular mudra, all right, we basically get caught up because we do all this kind of work looking into deep state. We do all this kind of work looking into the darkness, looking into these horrific, perverted, secret societies. And we see them doing this. And we see them using the Star of David. And we see them perverting these divine names of God. But they are not the creators of those names. They are not the creators of those symbols. They are not the creators of those mudras. They have perverted them. And through fear, that is what's basically causing you to see that if I have a fearful state of being and I see someone doing this, I react out of fear. If I hear the word Yahweh, I react out of fear. And say, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. It's corrupt. If I say the word Amen, oh no, that's based upon an Egyptian deity who killed people and was murderous and all that, right? So they got you, would be the best way to put it. they got you. You have fallen for their psychology, because that's exactly what they will appoint. This goes back thousands of years, from people being stoned, from people being massacred by uttering those particular types of names, by trying to follow certain paths that they would always try to label as demonic or something that is of the devil, when in fact it is actually the true path to moving yourself into enlightenment. And it happens today. People getting so worked up, people getting into such a frenzy, as soon as you do this, as soon as you see the Star of David, as soon as you hear someone say Yahweh, as soon as you see someone say Jehovah, as soon as you see somebody say Amen. Okay, and there's a lot of other different examples as well too. But as I said, my friends, this is a psychology. Okay, this is a psychology that they have used to basically having you go into that separation consciousness and just ridicule people who dare utter Yahweh, Jehovah, Amen, this, right? Because it's been perverted. So this is basically a trap within a trap, okay? The first trap represents that particular corrupt being utilizing that particular term to utter it themselves, to think that they are the divine, when in fact they're being quite the opposite. The secondary nature of the trap is that if you are uttering it and are fearful of uttering it, then you're basically putting that fear towards that being, because the fear, the inversion of that label, is going towards that being, which means that being can only control the fearful vibration of that term, of that symbol, of that gesture. It's all about an inversion. Now, what happens when you clear away that fear? What happens when you learn to let go of doing all of this rigorous digging into ancient secret societies that have been perverted, into looking at some of these aliens that have come here and posed as gods, attempting to utilize those terms, to feeling themselves divine when they are nothing of the sort, because they don't act that way, and they have not really walked the path of the divine. So what do? They pervert it. So what happens when you transcend all of that? What happens when you let go of that fear, when you come to terms with it and you make peace? You take that name of Yahweh, you take that name of Jehovah, you take that name of Amen, you take that sign of the Star of David, you take that gesture here, and you bring it into its true light. And now you truly experience the enlightenment of those anchors, the anchors of the names of God, the anchors of these divine symbols, the anchors of these mudras, because you have cleared away the perversion of yourself. Because as long as we fear those things, we've become perverted. We've become corrupted because we're buying in, and we think that we're trying to do people a service by telling them that. You're not. You're basically a guinea pig for a psychology pertaining to the darkness, which means you're not really giving any particular form of benefit by telling somebody, don't do this, or telling somebody, don't look at that Star of David, don't utter the word Jehovah or Yahweh or Amen, because it's all been corrupted. It's all been corrupted. And like I said, it's not that you're wrong, but you've fallen for it. Your naivety has fallen for that which has been perverted. Rather, look at the fear that that is generating and learn to soften and lighten up and let go of that fear. That fear is now no longer there. It's like, again, if somebody gets fearful over the word Anunnaki, then they basically are participating with that perversion. Someone gets in fear because of saying Elohim, right? Then you've fallen for that perversion, which means you're falling through the naivety of something that has been conjured through psychology. It's a psychological tactic. That's all this is. And as long as you continue to fall for that, you stay in the fear. and you fall into that fear. So this video is being shown to you to help prevent you from falling into the fear of that which is actually truly divine. To say the word Yahweh, to say the word Jehovah, to say the word Amen, these all represent powerful anchors. To actually work with the Star of David in its original gifting to humanity is something that's quite beautiful and divine. To work with the mudras, right? Like you would see with the ancient yogis, working with the yogis while they would go deeper into samadhi, working together with mudras, working together with mantras, working with breathing techniques, single pointed focus, bringing you into divine union. But you get caught up in pervertedness, right? And again, if we cannot see through that perverted, they got you. The very ones that have cultivated this idea to invert these names, these symbols, these gestures, they got you. You're hooked and you're a sucker because you have fallen for these very things that you think only no other way around it. They are corrupt. These very things are corrupt. These names are corrupt. Well, guess what? They're not. Because they have been used for thousands and thousands of years, even before the times of corruption, even before the times of this fall that has happened for many thousands of years. But even previously before that, these were gifts. These were blessings. These were bestowed to humanity to bring them back into where they actually belong, and that is in divine union. And all of these things that I have shared, Jehovah, Yahweh, Amen, Star of David, mudras, are all designed to bring you into the union of the divine. That's their original intention. So, as long as we get caught up into that darkness, into that fear, thinking, oh my God, this horrible being utilizes that. That's might as well, Brad, you might as well be screaming Satan in front of a church audience by doing that, right? Even the nature of Satan, again, represents a corruption, right? It even goes back into an earlier state. So like I said, all of these things represent the nature of something that has been tainted, something that has been perverted, something that has been distorted. And like I said, they lay the trap within the trap, believing that if you say Yahweh, then you're talking about that ancient Nibiruan. You're talking about that ancient Anunnaki imposter god, because they've used the term Yahweh, right? Or they use the term Jehovah. And like I said, you're correct about that. You're absolutely right. There's no incorrectness about that. But what is incorrect is thinking that they are the origin of that name, which they're not. They take it and they pervert it. They take it and they smear it. They take it and they corrupt it to the bone, so that they make you completely fearful of that name and saying, haha, we got them, suckers. Now they're not going to use that name. That name is going to help them to unify with the divine, but they're not going to use it now because they're all suckered by our little plan. What a bunch of naive fools. And that's how they look at you, when especially they see you reacting in that way. Reacting in the way of thinking that these things are corrupt, that these things are evil, that these things are hideous. You should not utter those things because they're of an evil being and blah, 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 blah. They got you. You're hook, line, and sinkered. Hook, line, and suckered. So this is very, very important to remember. What do? Learn to clear away the fear that surrounds those terms that you are so in so much anxiety of. Learn to clear away the cobwebs of those very terms that were given to humanity in good faith, in pure love and happiness and joy, so that humanity can rediscover its roots. Because those very terms that I have shared here are very much, can be worked with through that gifting of the divine through us. The original Elohim, the original watchers from those to heaven came, are the ones that actually provided that for humanity. Not the imposters, not the saboteurs, not the corruptors, not the manipulators. They took that and they shat on it. And they spat on it. And then they used it. That's what they did. So please remember that as you continue to do your research, because like I said, you're not wrong. You're half correct with the idea of them utilizing these particular terms. But I would say it's even less than half correct because you're not seeing it for what it truly is. You have to peel away the surface debris. You need to peel away the distortions and see what those terms, those symbols, and those gestures actually mean before they were tainted, because that is something that can help you towards your own personal journey to moving you into union with the divine.